Hey guys, it is August 19th. We have a balance patch. Now, it's kind of been about a month since last balance patch, so they said that something happened last week and they weren't able to get it through, which meant I figured we might have some like really major change that happened. We have some interesting changes for sure, but it's not exactly the ones that people were expecting, and with some of the competitive events coming up, I do wonder if some of these changes are going to shift the meta a little bit. Particularly, I've read some of these and they're pretty cool. So as always, guys, what I do in my patch notes videos, I will read the patch notes. I will then talk about what my personal thoughts are. And then my goal here is to determine if this is going to affect the meta. I usually will take a guess on if this is going to affect the meta or if it's not. And I just give people a general idea. With that being said, am I always right? No. I like to pride myself on saying that I'm pretty close to being right on most of them, but there have been a lot of times where I've been way off on if it's affected the meta or not. With that being said, though, that's still my goal. I want to get through the patch notes quickly, explain what's being changed, and if it's going to be affecting the meta at all. I've also been trying to split my strategy videos into Storm League and competitive, so I might also bring that up where I might say this will affect Storm League, but it's not going to affect competitive. The heroes that are being changed, mostly tanks, a few healers, few melee, a little bit more of range DPS, not too many on the bruiser side, nothing on the support side. A new Brock, Burning Rage is being removed, and a new talent called Burning Beetles is being added. A new Brock will deal 21 damage per second to all nearby enemies, while the Beetles will deal 7 damage to nearby enemies. So the thing is, on that tier, there's not a lot of beetle talents, so this gives a new beetle talent. It's a lot more damage, but it's not really any more survivability. None of the talents at 13 were ever really survivability, though, so you're not going to lose any survivability by taking this talent. It's just that if you are going more of a beetle variant, this is a good amount of damage. Generally, I would say at the start of a fight, you're going to have 3 beetles out. You're going to dive in, you're going to use your Q, you're going to use your W. There's 3 beetles. If you're in beetle build, then the first time that you dismount, you'll add 1 more beetle. So you'll have 4 beetles in that fight. Remember that this damage scales. So it'll be at level 13, it'll be essentially double what it says here. And a little bit more than double what it says here. So this will be over 40. This will be probably over 15. So 15, I mean, if you're sitting there, I mean, let's get out a calculator because it's too early for me to try to do this math in my head. It's like very simple math. So again, it would be essentially, let's go with just like 42 plus, and let's go 15. If you have 1 beetle, you're doing 57 DPS with this talent. If you have 2 beetles, you're doing 72 DPS. If you have 3 beetles, which is going to be probably the average for the start of a fight, this talent is going to be adding 87 DPS AoE. So that'll quickly clear up any extra minions that are in the area. It'll also just be pretty good. And then if you're in beetle builds, on average, you should be doing, you should be doing a little bit over 100 DPS from this talent. And now that also puts into question, again, beetle build. A lot of people wonder, should we take the level 16 talent Beetlejuiced? I still think that if Beetlejuiced allowed you to spawn beetles by attacking anything, I would say yes. But because it has to attack heroes and Anubarox has really low health, I'm always concerned that you're going to you're just gonna die too fast. You need to get 3 auto attacks off on a hero, and you get 2 auto attacks, and you've already lost half your health. And that's just what it feels like to me when I play a Anubarox. Now, as a bruiser, though, I know this is gonna sound a little weird. As a bruiser, I think Beetle build just got something very interesting. Now, the downside is that you don't have double soaking capabilities before level 13, but post level 13 you have double soaking capabilities, and as a bruiser you're not going to be the only frontliner, so beetle build gets a little bit more value because bruisers tend to get more time to hit people because they go in right after everyone's thrown abilities at the tank. Bruisers go in. So as a bruiser, this could potentially make a difference. On a map where the 4-man tends to rotate together and the solo lane kind of stays in their lane for a while, like Tomb of the Spider Queen, I think that this could actually be a pretty cool bruiser build. The only problem is, again, from level 7 to 13 is usually when double soaking becomes the most important, and so you get it a little too late. And then also the mana problem. And you're also kind of weak in the early portions of the game. So you don't exactly win. But in the competitive scene, this could be something, but most likely it won't. I don't expect this to change anything in the meta. I don't think this is going to make a Nubarok meta by any means, but I definitely think that this is a significant buff to Beetle build. Arthas, Howling Blast range being increased. Then we have Frost Presence, which is your W, and then the range bonus is being decreased. So that'll just essentially compensate a little bit. It'll even out. So if you take the talent, it's still beneficial, but it's not going to be as beneficial as it used to be. And then Death's Advance is now an E talent. New functionality increases the movement speed by 10%. Frozen Tempest maximum slow and attack speed is increased from 40 to 60%. That's not bad. It competes with some pretty big talents at level 20. So I don't know. As far as main tank Arthas, he still is going to have the same problems that he had before. Slightly more range doesn't necessarily make your W more reliable. It actually is going to still make it just as difficult to land, making this a really interesting change, but probably not going to make any difference in the meta. Yeah, they're just making some adjustments just to see. Blaze, we just saw that buff to those other auto attack talents. They're just nerfing the minion merc monster potential of it. I really didn't feel like it was that overpowered. As a bruiser, it felt really nice, but I've been watching a lot of competitive and like nobody's really using this. They're still running the same things. We see Blaze was used in some of these recent competitive events, and they just weren't even taking any of the auto attack talents. They were just using Blaze for stuns and bunker. It was just pretty much like HEC all over again. And so it was the Incinerator Gauntlet really necessary to nerf? I don't know. And again, so buff and underutilized talent, nerf a talent they probably overbuffed, but yeah, it was pretty insane. On to ETC. The solo lane build that I've talked about before, and I think I've made a video on, got a slight change, and I would argue it's a little bit of a buff, and other than that, nothing's really changed the meta of ETC. Guitar Hero and Hammer On just got a buff. Encore, enemies knocked back by the face melt or the amp reduce ETC's heroic cooldown. That's kind of neat, because it's percentage based and Mosh has a really long cooldown. So by shaving off 8% of Mosh, that's 16 seconds, and you're almost guaranteed to at least hit 2 people with your W, so you're easily shaving off 32 seconds, and then if the Encore hits anyone, you can shave off another 30 seconds. This could actually be really cool, because this is going to make it to where you're more likely to get Moshes, and you're more okay with using Mosh early in a fight, because even if it gets interrupted, you could get it back in like a minute. You're not going to get 2 Moshes in one fight, most likely, unless like all the stars align, which probably won't happen, where essentially you hit 5 people, which is going to shave off 40% of your cooldown, and then Encore hits 5 people, which is going to shave off 40% of your cooldown. So all in all, that shaves 80% of your cooldown off, and so it makes it, I mean, that's even still a 40-second cooldown, right? No, 80% would be I don't know, it's low. Why is my math so off today? It's like I've got caster math, I'm not even casting. Yeah, 24-second cooldown. So you could use it twice in a fight if the stars align. But I mean, if the stars align that much and people are that close together, then you probably would have landed a 5-man mosh anyways. So this is really interesting. It definitely competes. I think the other talent was really good because it allows you to lower the cooldown of your W, and you get to use it when you want it, where Encore just kind of uses it on its own. I gotta double check what Encore is, because I thought the talent that repeated it was at an earlier level. Oh, I can't check what Encore was. What was the talent level 4? Oh, there is none, so it's just here. That's interesting. Because you can still get the increased size, and then you can also get Encore. And the repeat, it doesn't say that the repeat, or no, it just says it's an amp behind, so it's probably a smaller version of it. Yeah, I mean that's definitely interesting. I'm gonna say this is a competitive talent now. It's definitely gonna compete with the other talent on that tier. And in the solo lane, I don't see you taking it. Well, you could, because it would lower the cooldown of your global. So you could technically global into a fight, land some good W's, and then global back to whatever lane you were in, and then you really wouldn't miss out on anything. But I generally take face melt in the global, but I think Encore could be an option. So I think that's really neat. And then Crowd Pleaser, it no longer reduces the cooldown of Stage Dive. Now it's just going to increase the slow. Remember, it also increases the size. So it's going to increase the size of Stage Dive and the slow. So that's going to be a pretty good option for the solo lane, because it's just going to be a stronger drop down, do a huge slow on everyone. It's a really good option. So overall, this is a lot of good buffs for the solo lane, and then I would say one potential buff. So let me just go over these really quick, because I actually don't think I read these. Guitar Hero, the duration bonus is being increased, and then the healing amount is being decreased. So you'll have your E going for longer if you take Guitar Hero, which is a talent that when you have your E going, the healing over time, your attacks will increase the duration. Your attacks will also heal you based on the damage they deal. It's really good for the solo lane, because you can be fighting someone for a long period of time and you pop your E and every hit is going to be healing you, so you can hold your own against a lot of solo laners. And then when you get into diving into their backline during a team fight, then you can kind of out heal a lot of the damage that they do. Crowd Surfer, that was the talent that allowed you to slide over structures and over like terrain and stuff. It's kind of considered a little bit of a meme talent, because when it works it looks pretty awesome, but for the most part it's just inconsistent. It isn't going to work that much, because your slide length is so small that they would have to be like on the edge of terrain if you really wanted to get value out of it. But what it's doing now is if it hits no enemies, its cooldown's reduced by 5 seconds, and it refunds the mana cost. I don't think this is going to be enough to change the meta. So there we go. Those are the changes. May, Crystallize level 4. I've said this talent was busted. They either needed to they either need to remove the spell armor part, or they need to remove the cooldown part. But instead they just nerfed both of them, which I think is an even trade. So they nerfed the cooldown last patch, and now they're nerfing the armor that it gives. Cold Front, the cooldown reduction from sliding through your W is being increased, so they're just trying to make this talent more competitive. They're trying to make that tier more competitive. Avalanche's cooldown is being increased to 90 seconds, which will definitely make Ice Wall more competitive. And then we have Flurry, because these talents were already pretty debated. This one just generally got more value more often and would screw up your team less often. So I think Ice Wall is definitely going to start shining a little bit more. And then we have Flurry. Cooldown refresh rate is being increased. So if you stand in your W, you get it back faster. Again, it's competing with 2 other really powerful talents. So overall, I think these are really good nerfs to May. I don't think any of them is going to really shift her build around too much, except for possibly the ult. That's the only thing that I'll probably expect from the meta. Muradin, Stormbolt Q, quest completion also gives Muradin mana. I rarely have mana problems on Muradin, so yeah, I mean, they say that he has a lot of mana tensions. I think this is just a slight buff, but it doesn't solve the problems that Muradin has. Bruiser, Chen, Breath of Fire's dot damage increase might help a little bit with wave clear. Freshest ingredients, regen globe durations increase. That's just, again, working on competing with other competitive talents. Celerity, cooldown reduction is being increased. Again, just competing with other competitive talents. I don't think this will make any major change with Chen. Deathwing, we've got Molten Blood trait. The healing is being increased from 0.5 to 0.6. Again, it's just competing with other more competitive talents. I don't expect this to make a huge change, but I do think that this might be a viable option into some matchups in the solo lane. Deckard, safety in numbers, the amount is being reduced. I didn't like this talent because it required you to be essentially have 4 people clustered together, because it's Deckard and 3 other people, and you never wanted people that close together, because EDZ slide mosh, or I mean, half the roster has something that can punish people that are grouped up. So I never liked that talent purely off of that. Changing the armor bonus and reducing the amount of people nearby, I still don't want 3 people clustered together. The benefit of Deckard is that he can fight in spread out fights because he can spread out potions. You can throw a Ruby, which I'm surprised that wasn't nerfed on this patch, into the enemy team, and now his team can get his front line can get healed over there. He can throw potions in his back line. He could stay kind of in the middle of the fight to really make sure that everyone gets value. So forcing yourself into there and competing with 2 really, I mean, so good talents. I mean, having a healer who can do 1,000 burst damage on a single ability, or having a healer who, I mean, taking a talent that makes it to where you have a better stun than Uther is just crazy. Both of those talents are so good. Uther's stun is a 10-second cooldown and stuns for 0.75 seconds. Your stun has a 5-second cooldown and stuns for 0.75 seconds. You literally outclass Uther by taking a single level 16 talent. Now, Uther gets a double stun at that level, so you're not like outclassing Uther, but you get the point, is that you can take a talent that's better than someone's actual ability. Or you can take a talent that allows you to do 1,000 burst damage to potentially the entire enemy team. I remember I had this fight where I did 2 full roots. And I mean, that's 2,000 damage that I did during a fight, and it hit the entire enemy team. And I remember looking back at that replay a couple times because we lost that fight, and I was like, what happened? Like, how much wrong has to happen if you hit 5 members on their team for 2,000 damage and root them for like 3 seconds straight? Like, it just blew my mind that we lost that fight. But those are fun fights to look at, because then you get to kind of see how even with the most right happening, some things can still go wrong. So it's kind of fun. But yeah, I still don't think this is a good talent. Tyronda, this is a pretty significant healing change, especially since you need to remember that she gets 2 heals every time that the cooldown rolls around. So whatever buff happens to her heal is doubled. And then they're buffing her W build, because it used to make it to where whenever you pierce to target, all of your abilities will only hit the first target. Now Harsh Moonlight and Empower will hit all the targets. It's interesting because I want to talk about this for a little bit on what this is actually going to do and what talents you have to give up to have those talents. So you have to give up the stun range, which is a huge meta talent. And it's also your burst. You have to give that up to get Pierce. And it only pierces the first target, right? It doesn't pierce like their entire team, which I might have just said that wrong because I forgot they changed this talent recently. I kind of went past it. And so the bonus damage is kind of irrelevant because you're most likely going to be near the fight if you're the healer. So in order to get Pierce, you have to give up an extremely important talent, but it could potentially double the value of both Harsh Moonlight and Empower, which is cool. But is it worth, because you're not giving up a lot of talent or a lot of value in these talents. You give up the cleanse, but oftentimes it's not going to be that valuable unless like you really need it. And also you give up the quickening blessings, or you give up the Ranger's Mark, but generally you're going to be taking Harsh Moonlight anyways. So this is where it's interesting. I would say in Storm League, because there's less coordination, it might be worth giving this up and going the W build just so you have a little bit more impact in fights. Again, dealing 7% of someone's health, or 2 different people's health, and also reducing 2 different people's movement speed and damage is a lot more impactful than slightly more damage or range on a stun. But in competitive, you have to take Lunar Blaze and you have to take Cleanse, which means that it won't change competitive at all. But I think this might actually be a better build for Storm League. Also, remember something too. Your heal reduces its cooldown for each ability hit too. So it's whenever basic attacks or whenever you damage an enemy hero. So your W is going to shave off 3 seconds because it's going to hit 2 different people. The other thing, I don't know how the percent health works if it affects it twice. I don't think it does. So again, it's still a little bit. I think it's a little bit more impact in Storm League, but it's not going to change the competitive build. Uther, they're reducing his health again. They really don't want him to be main tank. Holy Radiance, they're lowering the cooldown by 2 seconds, and then they're also increasing the heal. It's funny because I mentioned this yesterday. I said that Uther's W build is actually really good, and it could be potentially a main healer. And it could be a really good main healer. And someone was like, did you see the patch notes early? And I was like, no, like I haven't seen the patch notes early. But the fact that they're making this change makes me want to explain even further that I think Uther as a main healer could work. I don't think you should pick it early because it's countered, which that's actually like one of my favorite things is when there's a strong hero, but there's counterplay. And there's a lot of counterplay to Uther. But if he plays correctly, you give a ton of armor to your team. That lowered cooldown on your W, combined with the fact that at level 20, you can up the amount of armor that you give, because this already ups the duration. So if you take the level 1 talent, and you also have these lower cooldowns, this increased healing, level 20, you can give 50 armor to your team every time that you throw a W out, and you could even benediction it, and with the lowered cooldown, guess what happens? It shaves off 10 seconds. So you can throw out a W, giving 30 armor to or 50 armor to everyone, and you can wait until that 50 armor is almost up, and you can throw another W out, and then you keep that 50 armor going for longer, giving another huge heal to your team. And it's really powerful. I've been testing it before these buffs, and if you can get to 20, like no one on your team dies. You just have too much survivability because you're effectively doubling everyone's health. And it's just incredible. So I think that main healer Uther is going to be a thing, but let me talk about the rest of the changes. So Wave of Light, they're lowering the cooldown reduction of this talent. It's still worth it in main healer in my opinion, because it still does everything else and it's still cooldown reduction. Then we have Beacon of Light, level 16 talent. Uther receives 100% bonus self-healing when healing others with Holy Light. This bonus is increased by 200% if you're below 50% health. It's not going to change. Benediction's going to still dominate on outside of that. Then Tears Deliverance. Increase the damage and healing of Holy Radiance by 10%. Basic attacks against enemy heroes cause Uther's next cast of Holy Radiance to have its damage and healing increased by 10%. Because they did buff the base, this seems really good, but the fact that you have to hit heroes 3 times really, I think, drops its value. And again, to me, it would be more valuable to have either the double stun or the 6 seconds of 50 armor if you get to level 20. I think that would be more valuable than 40% more healing. But I'm okay with the debate on this one. I'm definitely okay with this one being a subject that I'll test out a few times to see. Then we also have Illidan, Rapid Chase. Additional functionality reduces the cooldown of die by 1 second when it deals damage to the enemy hero. Rapid Chase is really good, and there was a build that people in competitive were using for a while where if you Q someone multiple times, you do bonus damage, and this actually really helps out that build quite a bit. And then they're also buffing Fiery Brand, which is kind of nice. Well, they're changing it. It's less burst damage, but more consistent damage. I think that's perfectly fine. And then Hunter's Onslaught, healing increase from 25 to 35% of damage dealt. These are pretty good changes, actually. I don't think this is going to make Illidan overpowered, but I definitely think it's going to make him easier to get more value out of. So I think this is a good change. We'll probably see more Illidans in Storm League. Maybe not too many more in competitive, though. Kira, the Thirst adjusted functionality. Carnage heals for 50% of the damage dealt to enemy heroes. Anytime Carnage damages enemy hero, her basic attacks, or her next basic attack, is going to get a 15% increase up to 150% increase, because you need to remember how your Carnage works, right? If you hit someone that's right at the edge of it, you'll hit them probably twice. If you hit someone that's really close to you, you can hit them like up to 6 times on a single Q. So if you use an E, and then you bounce around and then you stun someone, you can almost get the 6 procs of your Q. So on average, you'll be most likely doing the, let's say 6 times 15. You'll be doing almost double damage on your next auto attack. And that's just hitting one person. There's a good chance that you'll be hitting an extra person because generally if you hit someone with an E, they kind of walk back into their team a little bit to play safe. So your next auto attack will be a bigger crit. I don't think that's going to win on that tier. Neither do I think Siphoning Link's going to win on that tier. The W talent is just so strong. You can heal for almost half your health by just pressing W. And you always get someone below half health with your basic combo, so I don't think that's going to change the meta. Lingering Alignment, these are just buffing underutilized talents. I don't really think any of these are going to change the meta. Additional functionality, enemies hit with grappling hook have their armor reduced by 15. This, I can see Vipey running this just because he already likes to initiate with grappling hook, but outside of Vipey, most of the other Curas I see don't really do that. They save they save the grappling hook to get out. And then Swing Life Away, the cooldown recharge rate is being increased by a little bit more. Again, underutilized talents. Zeratul, Unwavering Pressure, adjusted functionality. This is a remove the mana cost of Singularity Spike. Basic attacks against non-heroic targets reduce the cooldown of Singularity Spike, and 2.5 seconds against heroes. So just again, more burst, more damage, but it's hard to compete with the other level 20s. Shadow Stride additional functionality. Casting Vorpal Blade grants Zeratul a shield that absorbs 260 damage over second. That's kind of neat, especially with the lowered cooldown of that talent. But again, it's competing with some really good talents. Cassia, Surge of Light nerf. That's not enough for that nerf. It's still going to be the meta pick, and it's still going to keep Cassia in the meta. Level 16 additional functionality. Heroes hit by Lightning Fury reduce its cooldown. That's really good, but again, competing with other more powerful talents. She's definitely still going to be in the meta, and she's still going to be really powerful. Sorry, I've got allergies. Chromie, Deep Breathing. Now, Chromie has a lot of changes. I would actually consider this a mini rework. It's enough little changes, but let me go through it. Deep Breathing has a completely new functionality. It's a quest. Every time that Dragon's Breath hits an enemy hero, which is the one that goes boom, 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 increase its damage by 1.5% up to 30%. That seems pretty easy to get. That's 20 hits. And remember that oftentimes you can hit people more than once, and it's also pretty large, so you might hit more than one person. I would imagine this quest should be done around level 10 most games. Maybe a little earlier than level 10 most. For the better Chromie players before level 10, but on average probably around level 10, with probably a few exceptions of like certain maps that'll be easier to stack. Like if you're on Braxis, people are all like trying to fight over that point, just boom, boom, boom. You could probably get the quest done in a couple casts of the ability. So like level 4 or 5 if you're on Braxis, or on the first objective on Volskaya, things like that. After hitting 20 heroes, not only are you getting this 30% increased damage, but you're also reducing the cooldown of Dragon's Breath by 5 seconds and its mana cost down to like almost nothing. That seems pretty big for a poking based Chromie. Again, not as much of like the burst or anything, but man. And then Time Walker's Pursuit, new functionality. Again, this means it's completely different than what it was before. Gain 15 spell power and reduce the arming time of time traps by 0.75 seconds. Activates or reveal a targeted area for 2 seconds. Enemies seen are revealed for 4 seconds, and it's got a 25-second cooldown. So you activate it. Sorry, this is passive, and then you can activate it to reveal things. 15 flat spell armor or spell power is really good, because if you think about this talent is going to increase the damage of one ability by 30%, but this talent is going to increase the damage of both of your abilities by 15%. So they both have essentially the same effective value if you ignore every other talent in the game. But if you're taking talents that kind of go Q, W, Q, W, Q, W, then this one's going to be more valuable. If you take talents that are mostly Ws, this is going to be more valuable. And if you take talents that are mostly Q, the first talent that they're not talking about will be most valuable. It's going to be interesting. I think this is definitely going to open up what her potential builds are. I don't really like current Chromie, but that's whatever. Mobius Loop, new functionality. Dragon's Breath deals 50% bonus damage to enemies hit by its center. Enemy heroes hit by its center are slowed by 60%. That's kind of weird, because it's going to make it to where you don't hit someone that's running away. So you can hit someone 3 times if they're running away and you're aiming it in the direction that they have to run away. But if they're slowed by 60%, they're not going to get hit by the next 2. But the 50% bonus damage is good. So it would probably still be a better talent, even though you might lose the potential of hitting them 2 more times. Because most of the time, you're not going to hit them 2 more times. So if you do happen to hit them, I think that this talent's really good. Because it's more like this is consistent value, where the other one is more like best case scenario. And then slowing sands, the slow amount is increased from 7 to 10% every few seconds. So this is definitely moving ahead of the other talent. This talent was already really good, especially for maps where people have to just sit and fight on a point for a long time, because then you zone out an entire area and then they're forced to be in like this other tiny area, and then you're just pelting that area with spells. So it's a really good way of like zoning out. So like on Volskaya, for example, this can cover about 30% of the point, and generally only half the point is safe to stay in. So if you cover the enemy side of the point, they need to fight a lot closer to your team, giving your team a lot more value, and they don't have as easy of an escape either. So I do think this talent is really powerful. Here and there, teleport range is increased from 11 to 20. That could allow for some double soaking potential, or kind of a mini global, but not really. I don't think this is going to be competing with the faster Q talent thing. Unraveling. Spell armor reduced, or reduction increased from 5 to 7. Spell armor maximum stacks reduced. So it just stacks faster. So it's still your slowing sands, but it stacks faster. It's hard to compete with Pierce, but faster stacks of your spell armor seems really good. On to Junkrat. Basic attack damage is increased from 110 to 120. Extra wound timers, bonus damage on final grenade. I already thought this talent was really good, so that buff's nice. Bombs away. I mean, they're just buffing underutilized talents and also increasing his attack damage. I don't think any of this is really going to shift the meta. I still think this talent is better than people make it out to be, so even more so. But outside of that, it's probably not going to change anyone's opinions. Zul'jin, new talent, a surprise for you. Basic attacks bounce to nearby enemies for 50% damage. And it's just a nearby enemy, prioritizing enemy heroes. It's really good, but giving up the extra healing on your ult seems really risky. It will allow you to kill things much faster in fights, and this is just a flat thing, so it's while you're ulting or while you're not. So if your team's doing good, this talent's amazing. If your team's doing bad, I would say it's not bad. Where the other one is more like, if your team's doing good, it's not good, and if your team's doing bad, it's really good. So I guess it just comes down to how well you're doing on whether you take this talent over the one that heals you on your ult. Then finally, a bug fix for Maiev fixed an issue where Pursuit of Vengeance could gain cooldown reduction when hitting non-heroic targets. This was abused for a little bit, to the point that people started banning her, and then people kind of forgot about it, and then but yeah, I'm glad that it's fixed. With that being said, let me return to the top, and I'm just going to mention which ones are definitely going to be affecting the meta, and which ones probably won't. I don't think many of the Ting changes will affect much. I think the ETC change is definitely going to change his solo lane build. I think the Anubarak in very weird situations could be a good bruiser, and if you happen to be going beetle build, it buffs the damage of beetle build. No changes here, no changes here, no changes here. I think Storm League meta will be shifted a little bit by Tyronda's W build. I don't think the meta, I think her build will shift in Storm League. I don't think it's really going to change the meta itself. But I definitely think that the Tyronda players that are in Storm League could find a little bit more value by going W build now. Uther, I personally think, while there's a lot of counterplay to it, I think Uther main healer is definitely something that can be done. It will be difficult, but the extra armor values that you can give to your team is huge. So I really think that this is a valuable change, and it's going to make it easier to be a main healer on Uther. Illidan, I think it's going to make it easier if you want to play more of that repeated Q build. It does a lot of damage. I mean, if you guys have ever seen these talents for Illidan, it's pretty cool. I think he's considered a bruiser, or he's considered a melee assassin. he has enough self-healing, I'd figure he would be a bruiser. So the basic idea is you generally go immolation, just so you have double soaking potential. You can do camps a little bit faster. And you're not going to be spending a lot of times auto-attacking. So you don't actually really want to waste a lot of talents on auto-attacking, because you're only going to be auto-attacking enough to get cooldown on your rapid chase. This gives you more movement speed and lowers the cooldown of your Q. You used to take this because it increased dive range. And you might still take that, but I would argue that rapid chase would be really good. And so the weird part about that... Oh, yeah, we're good. And then you would take your abilities would heal you, and this is doubled versus heroes, so you gain 70% of the damage dealt from abilities as health back. So your Q is going to be giving you a lot of healing, your W is going to be giving you a lot of healing. And then most people take the, where is it? Both of these are swooping strike, right? There was one for Q, but with block charges. Did I miss that? Oh, it's this one. Oh, that competes with a really good talent, but that's what people were taking in the Q build. So it is potentially what people will still take in the Q build, because you can dodge most spells as Illidan. And you can out heal most damage over times. So having 75 physical armor for the next 3 basic attacks, and remember, you're gonna have a low cooldown on it between this and your auto attacks. Reflexive block is probably the talent you'd be taking. And then at this, you would get probably the spell armor, so that you have answers to that. And then you would go into 16, and the repeated dives deal extra damage. And so as long as you use your Q on a target that you've used a Q on within the last 10 seconds, you do a burst of damage. And remember that this is the damage for level 0. This damage is going to be more than doubled by the time you're level 16. So just keep that in mind, or it'll be kind of... It'll be increased by a lot. It'll be like 300 or 400 damage. So it's pretty strong. I mean, this build is really mobile, and it's pretty strong. So it's something that could be really interesting. So that's what's likely to happen to Illidan. Kira, I don't expect too many changes for her. Zeratul, same thing. Don't expect too many. Cassia, I don't expect too many. Chromie, I expect a lot of changes. I don't know what yet. It's going to be something that we definitely need to see everyone try out the different builds. And then we have Junkrat. I don't expect any major changes. And then Zul'jin. Yeah, if you're winning versus if you're losing, we'll change your level 20. That is the major thing. Will it do any huge sweeping changes to the meta? No. I'm kind of glad that they were a little bit conservative before we see all these competitive things happening over the next few weeks, few months, because this will give them an idea to see, as more of these competitive and coordinated players start playing more of these events, they can really view how much some of these heroes might be overpowered or underpowered, because it's hard to tell, because all we're seeing right now is Storm League, and I think these are great changes for Storm League, but I think some of these might be a little overdone for the competitive. For example, I think Deckard, Tyronda, and Uther are still really, really powerful for competitive. If you add Ana in there, I think those are the 4 best healers in competitive right now. And like, they all just essentially got buffs, you know? So I definitely think these changes were more oriented towards Storm League, which is the majority of players, but it may make a huge effect on the competitive we'll be seeing over the next few months. So with that being said, that is the patch notes. Thank you guys so much for watching. I do want to give you guys a little bit of a hint of what we're going to be seeing. I want to be doing a big event all through September, and I might start it just a little bit earlier. And it's just going to be a lot of videos, and it's going to be the videos that most people ask for, which is going to be fun. And then I also still want to run small events that aren't really skill based, or at least HotS skill based, in October, and we'll talk about those when we get there. So just stay tuned. Make sure to click the subscribe, the little bell, so you guys can see everything that's going to be happening over the next couple months on my channel, as well as with HotS in general. So thank you guys so much for watching, and feel free to check out my other videos.